We're going to keep moving on here. Next, we have Jennifer Barnhill, who's a freelance journalist and lead researcher for military.com. Please help me welcome Jennifer.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jen Barnhill, and I'm here to tell you a few stories. The first story I want to tell you today is about Corporal Fred McGee. Corporal Fred McGee is a war hero. He fought in the Korean War and was wounded twice, shot once in the face. But despite being wounded, he was able to assume command and save countless lives. His heroism earned him 2 Purple Hearts and the Silver Star. That is one military story. Another military story also involves Corporal McGee. Upon returning home from war, he was told by his commanding officer that he had earned the Medal of Honor. They were going to put him up for it. He also opened the pages of this magazine and saw his heroism captured in its pages, its colorful pages. But what it doesn't show here, and what you'll see soon, is that this picture did not depict him as he was, a black man, but a white man was pictured in his place. And, as it turns out, he never got that Medal of Honor because he served in the military in the 1950s as a black man. That's another military story. But what about Cornell, his wife of many years, who stood by his side as he suffered from PTSD, waking up in the night to nightmares, reliving those moments on that hill? Or what about his family, who is still fighting for him to receive the Medal of Honor all these years later? What about their story? So as a military family reporter and researcher, I wanted to understand, are military families in the narrative? Are they in these stories? As we see, there's so many versions of the same story. Which stories are being told and who gets to choose which ones are told? I can tell you this, they are in the narrative, but they're fighting to be heard. The examples pictured here, stories I've covered, talk about military family housing that is riddled with mold. Families feel unsafe. They go to Congress to get help because their command isn't able to help them. Families who suffer unimaginable loss of a loved one had to battle Congress 40 years to repeal something called the widow's tax. And even programming, like the Exceptional Family Member Program, that's just designed to help military families who have special needs relocate and ensure that they have the educational and medical caregiving, medical resources that they need. How are they being supported? They're in the narrative, but they have to fight to be there. And often they form nonprofits in order to do so. I wanted to find out a little bit more as a researcher. I wanted to understand, is this just the stories that I'm covering? Is this just my own impression? So I wanted to deep dive into one story in particular I just explored, EFMP. So I did a little Google search. It's not exactly high-level data collection, but it's a good indicator. So when I searched EFMP over the past few years, I noticed there were some trends. Despite being a program that's been around since the 1970s, this program has not been in media very much. But you'll see it jumps in 2016. When the Federal Register was open for public comment, families were able to share their experiences with the DoD. Then again, in 2020, Congress brought military families together to talk about this program, to better understand what they were seeing from GAO reports. So when military families got together and started telling their stories, positive change happened. So it's really quite notable that in 2021, the National Defense Authorization Act included provisions to standardize this program. So when families' voices are heard in military media, change happens. Again, as a freelance writer and researcher, I wanted to further understand this issue. So I did a little sampling of the top 3 media outlets in this space to look for who is quoted. Is it a bystander? Is it a military service member? Is it a civilian expert? Who is being quoted in the stories that we're reading about? And I looked at the newsletters for over a 2-week period for a total of 158 stories. And what I found was this. Only 6 of those stories could be even remotely related to military family topics. And more striking is that officers were quoted 9 to 1. Obviously, that's a pretty striking number. Is media to blame? Because that seems like it's an unbalanced number. We know that enlisted personnel outnumber officers. Well, obviously, there's more to the story. Media, they have access to only certain people. When it comes to who is able to speak on behalf of the DoD, those are generally public affairs officers. And so that's why we see those numbers, or one of the reasons we see those numbers. But another reason is access. Military families, like service members who are not sure of what they're allowed to say or how they're allowed to tell their story, shy away from the public eye because they're just not sure. Media also don't have access to that population because of those different stigmas associated with it. Also, we know that newspapers across the country are shutting their doors on a daily basis, with over 2,000 having closed over the past few decades. Stars and Stripes also is under threat to lose its budget. So we are under threat and under-resourced in the media space. But if military families need to tell their stories, we really need to look at this a little deeper. This problem requires addressing access and resources. So how I'm working to improve access is I have started a program called Military Dinner Table Conversations. It is a reverse town hall where I facilitate a guided discussion examining the issues faced by military families. In doing that, I inform my own reporting, but I'm also creating a source list, a resource for my fellow reporters who are able to access that population who they might otherwise not have access to. Also, I'm looking to partner, and I have partnered with military veterans in journalism to solicit grant funding to fund the position that would solicit, edit, and place military family stories in newspapers across the country and in our military media. This allows us to put those boots on the ground experiences into the hands of readers across the nation and help connect us. Okay, why? Why does all this matter? It's great to talk about Corporal McGee. His story is so impactful, and it made me terrified to be able to even say his story. I didn't want to get it wrong. I wanted to represent him. His story is so important to tell. But I don't know what it's like to storm a hill and save a friend. I don't know. And I would suggest that the average American doesn't know either. But they can understand Brandy and her story of wanting to tell her grandfather's story and help him get the Medal of Honor, because she didn't want his story to die with her. And I think the average American can understand that story. And the more we can tell those stories, those layered stories that are more accessible to the average American, I really think that we can help bridge the military-civilian divide and address so many of these concerning questions that we've had today. Thank you so much, and I'm just honored to be able to tell some of these stories. Thank you.
Thank you for using your gifts and your outlets that you can tell stories to drive change, especially around family. Wonderful. It's very powerful, especially, I haven't been a veteran, but I have a big family, and it's just powerful. My father was a World War II veteran, and so it hits home. I didn't see as much of how industry could help. So think about that. You don't have to answer that, but think about how industry can help. And, big companies have big influence. So how can we help with that? Just something to think about, maybe in the future adding a little bit in there about the help request.
And I have a really short answer. Money is obviously one, but connections to local newspapers to help place those stories.
Great.
That would be great.
Great.
I love the stats that you had. Great job on this. Really interesting information. How would you, through your the dinner table conversations, how are you trying to help get more of the enlisted families involved?
So it is an open platform. Everyone's invited. So how I need resources to be able to reach them, to be honest with you. So I have this amazing network provided to me, but also my existing networks. And it's Zoom-based right now. And we set a date and a topic and invite anyone to the table, because they're the experts. Military families are the experts in their lives. And so we're bringing them to the table, anyone who wants to join. Industry too. If you're interested in a topic and you want to learn more about it, everyone's welcome to come because they can learn from the people who are sharing their stories.
That's great, thank you.
Honestly, it was amazing, the blend of storytelling and the data. It really, brought the story to life. And especially, you answered my question, but especially the conversations that you're having. And as an enlisted veteran, I was not shocked to hear that, but that 9-to-1, I was a little, like, all right, well, we got to step it up on the enlisted side. But thank you for bringing this all to life,
Yeah.
and it'll be really exciting to see what.
And veterans sharing their stories, that provides that can change those numbers, you know.
Thank you for what you're doing. I really love the data you cited to be able to sort of show an example of what you're doing, and just this whole issue of storytelling is so important. I'm curious to know, given the news landscape and what you talked about in terms of so many newspapers having to shut their doors, but there's also a lot of effort behind a lot of the nonprofit news outlets that are out there, the MacArthur Foundation and their big investment in Press Forward and the Knight Foundation, et cetera. I'm wondering how much you've thought about asking for funding from them or partnering with some of the big organizations like American Journalism Project that are looking at how to keep and build some of these nonprofit news organizations who aren't military focused, but would be ripe for the kind of storytelling you can bring to the table. So.
Absolutely. And working with military veterans in journalism, they have those strategic connections that I hope to leverage as well.
Great. I'm happy to talk to you more about this.
Yeah, that would be
because we
great.
do a bunch
Thank
of
you.
work in this field.
Thank you all.
Well done.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.